Our first presenter is Leander van de Ven. Yeah, he's an environmental studies major with a minor in environmental science and resource management, and he is graduating in a couple of weeks. Leander is a modern-day Renaissance man. I learned this just today. Not only does he have a mind for science, which you will soon hear about, he is also a member of the Husky cycling team, and he performs clarinet in the campus Philharmonic Orchestra. Woo! I learned all this off his sheet. The title of his presentation is Electrofishing Effects on Endangered Species. His host organization was NOAA Fisheries Protected Resource Division. His site supervisor there was Diana Dishman, and his faculty advisor from campus was Professor Tom Quinn from right here in the School of Aquatic and Fisheries Sciences. So let's give it up for Leander.
Salmonids, which are fish in the salmon family, are an integral part of Washington's ecosystems, culture, and economy. Unfortunately, many salmonid populations are currently threatened or endangered due to habitat loss, harvest rates, dams, and climate change. To effectively monitor the recovery of these populations, intrusive sampling methods are regularly permitted. While harm to endangered species is banned under the Endangered Species Act, Section 10 provides exceptions for the purpose of scientific research. Electrofishing is one of these methods that is permitted for use on juvenile salmonids. It uses an electric current passed through water between a metal wire anode and a pole-mounted cathode to stun fish and enable their capture. Electrofishers can be either backpack or raft mounted. Despite being an efficient capture method, electrofishers can have negative health effects on fish, with salmonids being particularly susceptible to mortality, spinal injuries, and hemorrhaging when sampled. So to get a better understanding of the interactions between electrofishing and fish, I asked the following research question. What are the immediate, latent, and population-level health effects of electrofishing on salmonids? The results may shock you. To answer this question, I interned with the NOAA Fisheries Research Permitting Team, which authorizes Section 10 permits in the West Coast region. My work at NOAA consisted of updating literature on the effects on the species of permitted sampling methods. So to answer my question, I conducted an extensive literature review, citing over 25 sources in my final review, and I complemented this with hands-on experience conducting electrofishing with the University of Washington's fisheries class, as shown here. So the immediate health effects of electrofishing are relatively easy to observe and are well understood. They include stress and fatigue, which causes reduced feeding and increased vulnerability to predation. The most detrimental effect is mortality. This typically occurs from asphyxiation or respiratory failure, and electrofishing can also cause spinal injuries and internal hemorrhaging. These are caused by convulsions that are caused when electricity is pulsed or switched on and off. The frequency at which these effects occur depends on a number of factors, including fish age and size, electrofishing waveform, frequency, and the skill of the operator, as well as number of exposures. So the latent or long-term health effects of electrofishing are harder to observe in the wild and are less well understood. However, in my research, I uncovered a body of evidence showing that electrofishing causes reduced growth, particularly in fish that have spinal injuries. So this results in lower weight and length than typical fish. And this reduces their competitiveness and increases their vulnerability to environmental stressors and predation. Beyond this, the long-term effects of electrofishing are poorly understood. At the population level, electrofishing does not typically affect abundance unless the population is very small or frequently sampled. Beyond this, the effects on populations aren't well known, as it is also difficult to establish in the wild. In my review, I found a lot of mentions of a need for further research on long-term health effects. I also found a general lack of overall research on electrofishing health effects within the past decade. So, why does this matter? Put simply, we have so many salmonid populations that are in a state of crisis in the state of Washington that we really can't afford any unnecessary harm, even if it is from legal fish sampling for research purposes. So, what can we do about this? Well, we can first of all address this with further research on data gaps. And another measure that NOAA can take is to address the lack of standardized operating guidelines for electrofisher settings. Another step that can be taken is to use less intrusive sampling methods like the seine nets shown here. And we can also collect more data on electrofishing injuries by using existing abundant surveys to find the occurrence and the severity of these injuries. In conclusion, electrofishing is a vital sampling method, but since it has detrimental health effects that are insufficiently understood, we need to address these data gaps. We can also promote electrofishing. And so while sampling of live animals is essential for population recovery and analysis, we need to consider what the trade-offs are in our sampling methods and strive to use the least intrusive methods where possible to reduce harm to these vulnerable species. Thank you to my site supervisor, Diana Dishman, my faculty advisor, Thomas Quinn, my family, and my lovely dog, Hazel, who some of you may have seen in a bag outside. So, thank you very much.
All right, questions for Leander?
Yes, good question. So, NOAA does not permit the electrofishing of adult salmonids in the West Coast region because they are much more susceptible to injury. However, as I noted in my presentation, these growth effects do take effect on juvenile salmon and it impedes their growth, which is why I chose to focus my presentation on juveniles. So it's a less intrusive method. Basically, it sweeps the bottom of a lake or stream, and so you're not doing the electroshock, which can cause a lot of stress to the fish.
Is electrofishing ever used for purposes other than scientific sampling?
Since it is a method that is only permitted through NOAA fisheries, it is almost always permitted just for sampling. There's no real other way of getting a permit for it.
When conducting the sampling, is the intent to catch and release, or is it more so just whatever happens, happens?
It's always catch and release. There is often some incidental mortality, but they're always held for an appropriate amount of time in specific water temperatures. The goal is always to return them in as undisturbed a state as possible, although, of course, being completely undisturbed isn't feasible.
We have one more question.
For electrofishing compared to using the net, what are the differences based on cost and labor?
Yeah, so electrofishing is commonly used because it is so effective at capturing fish. However, the equipment can be rather expensive, and you do need multiple personnel to go behind the electrofisher with nets to collect the fish. You need apparatus for holding them as well. So it can be quite cost intensive. The seine nets aren't quite as effective, but that's one of many other methods that are cheaper and don't cause as much stress to fish.
Great. Thank you so much, Leander.